Hi everyone, welcome to my presentation about autism stereotypes and misconceptions. So what is autism? Is it a disease or lifestyle? Many people have asked this very question, but what is interesting is that the real definition of autism refers to a broad range of conditions characterized by challenges with social skills, repetitive behaviors, speech, and nonverbal communication, according to Autism Speaks, a nonprofit organization advocating for autism awareness. There are 4 types of autism spectrum disorder: autistic disorder, Asperger's syndrome, pervasive developmental disorder, and child disintegrative. It used to be that way until the DSM-5 existed. Continue on the topic of what is autism. It has a large spectrum of symptoms, skills, and levels of impairment. ASD ranges in severity from a handicap that somewhat limits an otherwise normal life to a devastating disability that may require institutional care. I got that also from Autism Speaks. People have the common knowledge that autism includes people who have mental conditions, but there is so much more behind that label. Autism has a wide spectrum, and everyone with autism is very different, each having its own special set of strengths and weaknesses. And the indications of autism in a person usually becomes apparent when someone turns 2 or 3 years old. In this presentation, we'll dig deeper into the conversation about autism and critique the history of autism, as well as discuss how different cultures perceive autism and how they're being treated now. So according to NATT-AP partners, 63% of students who are bullied are on the autism spectrum. And according to the CDC, 1 in 54 children, 1 in 37 boys, 1 in 151 girls have autism in America. This fact not only alarmed me, but gave me a signal that something must be done about this, because those people deserve to be treated with more love and understanding from others, since they are not only misunderstood, but also unfairly stereotyped. There are many positive effects of inclusions, where both the students with special needs along with the students in the classroom both benefit. Research has shown positive effects for children with disabilities to areas such as reaching individualized education program (IEP) goal, improving communication and social skills, increasing positive peer interactions, and many educational outcomes, and post-school adjustments. Positive effects on children without disabilities include the development of positive attitudes, perceptions of persons with disabilities, and the enhancement of social status with non-disabled peers. This is from an article about inclusion from Wikipedia. Autism is 4 times more common in boys than in girls. It knows no racial, ethnic, or social boundaries. Family income, lifestyle, or educational levels do not affect a child's chance of having autism. Next up, I'm going to talk about the misconceptions and stereotypes of autism. The hit movie Rain Man that premiered in 1988 which featured Dustin Hoffman as a character who is a savant and has autism. It displayed Hoffman's character as having a photographic memory and the ability to calculate large numbers in his head. According to Volker, in the article from Drasma, Volker thinks this was crucial at that time because it raised awareness for autism. But he also kind of implies that this movie was not an accurate portrayal of every person with autism, since they are all different, like I said before. In that aspect, I agree with Volker, because although this movie was great to raise awareness for autism, but it also brings up a very common stereotype with autism that everyone with autism has savant skills, which is not true. On the Royal Society report, it talks about a specific white coat scene in this movie where it displays a woman with autism named Linda, and it seemed like that she is only described as autistic, as it is the only thing that defines her, which is not true. She is displayed as a person who hates things when things are in disarray, and also a person who throws a tantrum. These are common misconceptions and stereotypes that the public usually ties to the autism community, which is very far from the truth. This kind of portrayal is very troubling because the media always only show the severe side of the autism spectrum, but they don't display the many different kinds of people on the spectrum, which is extremely important for people who are neurotypical. And neurotypical means people who do not have autism. This report highlights that the larger audience will perceive the autism community according to how people on the spectrum are portrayed in the media, which contributes to the creation of stereotypes of the autism community in a very exaggerated way. When they talked about the proliferation of autism stereotypes, they talked about how most experts and many people see autism as an exclusively male disorder, which truly affected the amount of help the female population who have autism have, since they are not as looked after as much or diagnosed. And this also is an article from Drasma's article, not the Royal Society report. To continue on, Drasma, the report talks about the work by Drasma, who examines how society has stereotyped ASD. The Royal Society report said something that was dry, interesting, because they said media representation of talent and special abilities can be said to have contributed to the harmful divergence between the general image of autism and the clinical reality of the autistic condition, which is very interesting. They also touched on a topic of the idea of what experts pinpoint what a normal person with autism is like, which is controversial. Which is a controversial view because there's so much variation in the autism community that there is no such thing in my own opinion. There is some validity to this statement because media is consumed by most people, and whatever it shows them is pretty much the truth to them, since they grew up with that material, so it would be hard to get off to get out of the media's grasp from that. Some see autism as something bad. Some see it with a more open mind. In a particular article I've read, I've learned that for many years the relevance of culture to autism was ignored, and some researchers believed that autism was intrinsically linked to modernity and westernization, and was rare in other cultures. And the article I'm talking about is by Drasma, too. I think my views can be expressed best in this way. While autism itself, the neuropathology of it, may not be culturally determined, our interpretation of those behaviors and our response to those behaviors is, which is also from Drasma, the quote that I just quoted. In one of the other articles, which is by Derwitt, examines how different cultures result in diverse diagnostic. David Mandel's sentiments really echoes what others believe in, because sometimes it isn't only the culture that determines that country's point of view of autism, but it might also be because of their own interpretation of what autism actually is. For instance, in many Asian cultures, children are expected to be respectful to their elders through their language and behavior. But these aspects of social interaction can be tricky for children with autism to master. These kinds of behaviors would be hardly noticed in the West. As a Taiwanese American, a lot of people can see this happening to many with autism in Asia. But even though they mean no disrespect, the kids with autism, their elders take it personally because of their lack of understanding of what autism is. In most Western countries like the UK and USA, many experts encourage many to get diagnosed at an early age in order to get early intervention. But many with autism outside of the US and Western Europe are somehow not encouraged to do so because of the lack of awareness of both developmental norms and autism. I'm going to quote something from an article from Drasma. The stereotype of autistic persons being savants is without a doubt one of the most striking discrepancies between the expert's view and the general view of autism. End quote. Therefore, this causes a lot of people with autism who are not as gifted to be frustrated with these stereotypes, because it raises expectations for a person with autism which are unrealistic. Even though the media creates a lot of stereotypes, but sometimes, I'm also quoting another quote by Drasma, the idea of autistic persons teaching wise lessons is often presented to imply that we would stop viewing autism as a set of deficits or even as a condition at all. Using this is shown by portraying autistic people having different sets of talents, and they are not that different from the neurotypical population. To take something from Drasma again, there is an unrealistic stereotype that autistic savants have supercomputers for their brain and have no feelings towards anything, which is not only a myth but harmful to the autism community. A particular example is South Korea. there was a study done of more than 55,000 children, which estimated, quote, an autism prevalence rate at 2.64%, according to Dershowitz report. And the most interesting part is that they have twice the autism prevalence rate of the United States. Researchers think that autism goes underdiagnosed in Korea because there is a strong stigma attached with autism over there. People think that if a child had autism, it may not only affect the marriage prospects of siblings, but also affect his or her parents' careers. Hence, parents often label their child as having reactive attachment disorder, or lack of love, as it is known in Korean. About 2/3 of children who identified as having autism were not receiving any autism-related services. A lot of these kinds of children in Korea are mostly called a border child, which is a new term to describe someone who would be diagnosed from the West. And somehow parents in that country prefer this label because it quote-unquote implies that the child is only impaired socially, not intellectually, and that the condition is temporary. This is very troubling because this not only demonstrates their lack of understanding to autism, but also shows how they mistreat or misunderstand people like that. I can't say this is how other countries in Asia treat the autism community, but everywhere I go in Asia seems to look down on autism as a taboo. On the other hand, in many Western cultures like in America or the UK, people want to understand autism and not only get their kids diagnosed early, but also see what they can do to help them. Next, to move on, I'm going to talk about what stereotypes or misconceptions can cause to the autism population. A news article by Epstein reported a tragic case of attempted suicide of a young person with ASD. Many felt disturbed when they read the part about how the school not only didn't quote-unquote take any reasonable measures to prevent it or to stop it from happening, but also inadvertently quote-unquote created, fostered, or permitted a hostile environment to exist in RN's school that deprived her of educational opportunities and benefits on the basis of her disability. This really exudes that even with all the awareness and other things that is happening, some people still don't take autism seriously or want to help them, even when they are in dire need of support from their school in situations like these. From now on, people should take a look into these matters seriously, but also be more educated on this topic, because everyone deserves to be treated with respect and love equally. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and I hope you enjoyed it.